Welcome, everyone, to DEI After 5, the show that focuses on topics across diversity, equity, and inclusion with some of the brightest minds in the industry. Here's your hostess, inclusive culture curator and coach, Sacha Thompson.
Hey everyone, and welcome to this week's episode of DEI After 5. So if you have been following us, you know that we've been having some wonderful conversations with guests talking about, what happens if DEI goes away, or who's responsible for it when the chief diversity officer is no longer a part of the organization. And so today what we're going to do is continue on that string of conversations and thoughts. So for so many people, when you get into a position of leadership, it's like, okay, I just need to do the job. But part of that job is ensuring that the culture of the organization moves in the right direction. And part of that is ensuring that the DEI efforts, if they are formal or informal, are weaved into part of your responsibility. And so for so many executives, even if they are part of what you would consider marginalized communities, some may not want to take on that responsibility. But it is absolutely necessary in order for this work and for us to continue the efforts of diversity, equity, and inclusion. And so today, my guest is DeWayne Allen, who is an executive at RTX Corporation that's a part of the aerospace and defense industry. And so we will have a conversation with DeWayne about, the responsibilities of leaders and executives in this industry and as a part of this space. So DeWayne, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.
Yeah. So for those who may not know who you are, so can you tell us a little bit about yourself and kind of how this became an important thing for you?
I guess it's just weaved on how I got into aerospace and defense into the marketplace, right? So I am born and raised from Memphis, Tennessee. I went to undergrad at Tennessee Tech University. I was getting my master's at the University of Tennessee, and then this company called Raytheon at the time was at a NASA Black Engineers Conference, right? And I met my first mentor in 1996. And he was telling me, hey, this might be a good company for you, and this is what you can do with your engineering degree, right? This is what we do. It's really cool stuff. And so, based on that, I was blessed to join the organization, and I've worked in operations, I've worked in engineering, I've worked in strategy, what we call Six Sigma. I worked in P&L, was a part of the two largest deals, M&A deals in aerospace and defense industry when UTC purchased Rockwell Collins, as well as when UTC and Raytheon, which is now RTX, came together. And so now I serve in our what we call Crisis Capabilities Organization as a strategic capture executive. And I'm responsible for, basically selling and marketing our products in our EOIR business as part of our advanced products and solutions portfolio. So it's a great job, and DNI is ingrained in who I am. And it got me to where I am today. And I take on the ownership, if you will, the responsibility to make sure that there are more people that come from where I come from that look like me, look at our industry as a place where they can go grow their career and take care of their family and build their goals, right?
Wonderful. As I was listening to your story, what was fascinating to me was this was an executive that reached out to you, like not even at work. Like this was a conference. This was,
Right.
Outside of the norm.
Right.
And so what that says to me is sometimes in order for us to make those connections, we have to get out of our comfort zone. We have to get out of this box, this screen, and go out and be proactive kind of in the process.
Yeah, that's a great point. I think early on, at least at Raytheon and a lot of big companies, right, that's in the space, they realize that, hey, I got to go get talent from everywhere, right?
Mhm.
And usually, it started in the 70s and 80s and things like that. And they may be shadowed on programs like affirmative action or DNI, but where can I get the best talent? I don't care what it looks like. I want the best brains in my organization to grow our business, right? And to do the hard work that we do. And that there's no color to that. There's no sexuality to that brain. There's no demographic to geography location to that brain. There's no certain college. Those brains are everywhere, and we have to go out and get there. And my first mentor, Ben Harrell, he was somebody that introduced me to this aerospace and defense market. I didn't know anything about it. I even though I was an engineer, and I was like at the time, I was going to go into automotive where we were, because that's who recruited heavily in the South, right? During those years, it was automotive or low tech or even textiles, right? And materials and things like that was based in the industries that were in the area. And so that alone sets the stage, right? And then it goes and it ties into these individual companies. I like to call it their billboards, their posters. They say who they are as a part of their statement, their value statements. And these are important that we go embody that, and we got to show that to people. And that's how it shows up.
Yeah, it's not just the brochure.
No, it's not the brochure, the smile, the face and the point, the website pictures. It's if these are our values, let's go embody them, and let's go show the world how we do it and how it shows up. And it's as easy and simple as that.
So, DeWayne, I appreciate that, because, at the top, I started talking about how leaders, often want to say, this is what I was hired for, right? I wasn't hired to do this people stuff. I wasn't hired to do, all the touchy-feely getting to know folks. We have a job to do, and that's all that I want to do. But what I'm hearing and what I'm hearing from you, and what I'm also seeing in the workplace now in this kind of post-pandemic era, is people want to be seen as human. They want to be seen and understood as beings that have lives outside of work and, all of these other things. And so how does that shift, or does that shift or change how leaders need to show up right now in your mind?
That's a great question. So I think we all have these, things we call cultural competency, right? Like, who am I? How do I show up? Who am I? How do I show up in these cases? And we take a lot of these Myers-Briggs and Clifton Strengths, as particularly when you get into leadership and you advance in leadership and you advance in to an executive role. You go and get all these 360s, and you're like, okay, am I exuding the values that I say I believe in, as I put that on paper, and how are people receiving that? Right. And you have to, and as any human being has to start realizing, we say it all the time when we're engineers, at least when I started, it was like, hey, I'm used to numbers and things. I didn't know how to deal with people. And I was weird. I was different. I was weird as an engineer. I could actually talk to people. I actually like people. Right. So that was just different for me. And I would show up differently, even in those times, as somebody who could be an influencer, somebody who could, really articulate what the team is feeling, thinking, articulate to the customer on how that moves forward. And so that became like my superpower, right? Of how to influence, make a decision, and change a decision maker, right? And so when we're measured from a people leader perspective, you have to be competent enough to know, how does this person show up? Do they know how they show up? Do you know how you show up? How are they accepting your leadership, your decision making, right? And how are you accepting their ability to do what they have to do tactically? Yeah. And though that's a lot into that, and that's outside of dBs and ohms and velocities and things like that we do in math, and things that we do in our day-to-day work as we go meet the needs of our customers. And so it's very important, if you want to move the needle forward, you have to be confident on how people actually get stuff done. And and you got to know them. That's just how it works.
It's so funny because as you were talking, it reminded me. So one of the other many hats that I wear is I chair the leadership development committee for my sorority, for my chapter. And this past in one of our past meetings, I read this what we call leadership diamonds and pearls, and it's it was what is it like to be on the other side of you,
right?
And the whole premise of that was, we're quick to point out the flaws of everybody else, and the list of our own flaws are very short. But what is it really like to be on the other side of you? Like, what is it like to be in partnership with you? What is it like to be in relationship with you? Right? What is it like to be in sisterhood or brotherhood with you? And it really causes the self-reflection that I don't think a lot of leaders actually take the time to do. So when we talk about, Myers-Briggs or StrengthsFinder, for some people, that's the aha moment of, okay, I didn't see myself that way. Or 360 is a really good opportunity for people to see what it's like to be on the other side of you, because we don't realize, this person is curt and short with their responses, and how that may impact how you are seen, or how people connect with you or not connect with you, right? And you're just thinking, oh, okay, I just want to be brief because I'm valuing their time. That might not be how it's coming across. So, as leaders, what I'm hearing from you is that cultural competency is understanding, one, how you are showing up. What is the culture of the organization? How do I fit into that as a part of that? And then how do I help those that are on my team understand how they can show up in these spaces, not in inauthentic ways, but in ways that there is alignment? Because that's often one of the challenges, at least with folks that I coach. I find that some of that misalignment is their values don't align with what they're seeing every single day.
Absolutely. That's a great point. So I get to the proverbial, taking a star and trying to hit it with the hammer and throw it in a star, right? And originally, that's how we all were set up to be, machines or some point of productivity, right? And the only way you could get results was you had to do it this way, you had to look this way, you had to be this way, you had to sound this way, and you couldn't put your own your authenticity, your own self into it. So you was based like a machine. And then when we start realizing, right, particularly in your thing, what you do with your sorority from a leadership perspective, I do the same thing for the 100 Black men here in Charlotte, right? I lead our leadership development program as well, and we spend a lot of time in the beginning analyzing who you are, right, and how people perceive you, and I'm an engineer, so I'm still an engineer. So when I get those results back from the Myers-Briggs, from the Clifton Strengths, from all the DISC profiles, all that stuff, I go straight to the negative. I do not go to I go straight to, okay, DeWayne, you laugh too much, people might not see you as being serious, right? DeWayne, you are, you're having way too much of a good time in a struggle moment. People not knowing that, I understand I've had some very traumatic things happen around me, to my family, friends, things like that. So I know what serious is, right? And so I can't be there. And as a former athlete in college and in high school, right, I had to turn it on to be a football player, to go break somebody's brains in on the next side. Right? So I had to turn on a different piece. And if I showed up that, being that I have a deep voice, I got this very white thing going on, I'm a pretty big brother, right? White men can be a little terrified, right? Particularly short ones, right? White women can look at me different if I don't make them comfortable, right? And then white men that are the same size as me, it's like, okay, we're gonna sit here and have like an arm wrestling competition to see who's stronger, right? Right. And so I had to realize that I had to settle in with being me. right? And having a smile, being cordial, knowing people, open the doors, being extroverted like I am, like having engaging in conversations, engaging with people. I had to realize that that's me and that's my superpower. That's not a flaw that I don't need to fix, right? That is something I
You don't
need
need to
to
hide from that.
and be a force multiplier for me to get to where I want to get to. And even better, if somebody sees that as a detriment, then maybe I don't need to be in that place where that person is. Maybe I don't need to be in this role working for this person or in this business or in this function, right? Because that's how you see it. Because the results show for themselves, right? And so it's really interesting to hear that I read situations where DeWayne gets results, he just don't get it the way we used to get it, right? And I'm like, okay, what's wrong with the result, right?
You wanted results.
Do we make our numbers? Or is it a bad thing that my entire team likes each other? I didn't know that was a bad thing, right?
Right.
That was different. So that's some feedback. So
but I think you hit on something that's really, really important, right? It's regardless, like you have to be mindful as a person of color in a leadership role, you have to be mindful if you want to or not of how other people perceive you, right? And being comfortable with showing up as your authentic self anyway. Like there's so many people that feel like I have to code switch, and to some degree, you have to do some of that, but you don't have to do it to a point where you are not who you truly are. And I was nodding when you were describing yourself as this big man, and you could be intimidating to some people. I'm 5'2", right? 125 pounds, and I'm intimidating to people. And so it's an interesting. It's very interesting to me that the intimidation comes when it doesn't fit into a box that other people have created for you.
That's right, or created for themselves, and they've been successful with that creation. And so that's the easiest thing to do. Let me go replicate that creation along the way, so everybody can look like that, because that's easy, and particularly when you're busy, you're engineering, you're doing these hard stuff. I need you to perform this way, because I know this is going to get the results, right? That I'm looking for, period. And so it's interesting. Go ahead, please.
Yeah. So, this leads me to think about, we are now in a time and a place. So you're mentoring folks, you're getting them to show up more authentically in these spaces, having other leaders kind of step into, leaders of color and from other marginalized groups kind of step in as leaders with this understanding. But we're now in a time and a place where this anti-DEI rhetoric is changing the language and weaponizing this. And so you might have someone that is absolutely qualified above and beyond that box that we were just describing. And they're then labeled with, oh, they're just a DEI hire. How do you deal with that? How do you take that on as an executive, right? When that's the conversation that's taking place around you.
Right. So first and foremost, growing up in Memphis, Tennessee, and being the grandchild of a Black man who was, working really hard to trying to provide for his children and grandchildren, and his family, and he was trying to get for his rights. And they say, "I am a man," right? It's with those signs. That's where I start, right? That's why I start. Anytime we have those discussions, and then you start looking at, well, to your point, like he always just a DNI hire. That's there's nothing new under the sun. Just replace DNI with affirmative action, right? And there's nothing new under the sun. And then it said, hey, we got to do this before we're gonna get dinged. Instead of looking at it like from a positive standpoint, like how dare anybody else tell our organization, our corporation, where and when and how we can go about getting talent, right? We want the best brains in the world to come and be a part of our organization, period. Full stop, right? And there should be that place, those brains, those best brains, don't have not in a central location. They're not at a certain demographic. They're not a certain race, creed, color. They're not a certain religion, and they're not a certain sexuality. You just want the best brains, right? And so, how dare we, you as a person who's trying to get this talent, have someone dictate to you, hey, this is, what's what I want. Now, to your point of this is a DNI hire, it's like, okay, well, is this the talent we want if we compare it to any other talent that we bring in? Is there different slates that we can ensure that we get, is that living to our value statement, right? Right? Or is that just fluff? Back to our point of this is the website, right? This is the thing, right?
Right.
That's where you have to lean on is where is out to our values as an organization and as what we value. And how does that show up, right? Yeah. Are we lazy and we just want somebody else to go solve that problem? Or are we, or because we're problem solvers, right? And we want to get the best brains, right? Or are we that, obnoxious to the world and know that the best brains are everywhere? And just because I didn't know where they looked from, right? I didn't know that they existed. I didn't know that they were at this school that has advanced machine learning classes that's taught by one of the best professors in the world. And they happen to be at a HBCU or Hispanic serving institutions, and their students are coming out and they know the stuff we need and talent we need. And somebody told me that they exist. Just because they're not, that don't mean that these people are not just a talent, right?
Yeah.
To the point of, we were talking earlier, like a duck is going to hire a duck, right? Right? A duck is always going, and the duck knows exactly what the duck's supposed to do, how the duck's going to work. Their own ducks worry about it's like, hey, the duck might be a different color, right?
Right.
But what happens if you're in a swan and in a pond and you have this beautiful swan that's surrounded by these ducks, and this beautiful swan, right, will give you everything you need, gives you the most attention, you'll find the most food. It's so much there, and you want that swan to be a part of your team, right? Right, that rarity, right? And so it's interesting that duck who's making that decision has got to be like, okay, I got to show up differently. I got to be different because this is not a duck, right? This is a swan, and so I have to think through those things. And we try to keep it basic human level, we say, hey, we got values and things, but are we really exuding the values that we put out there, that we hold each other accountable to in our performance reviews, in our things that we have, that's on that statement? And so that's where we have to go look at that and be back to the point of being culture confident, and back to the point of be audacious about, hey, our talent is everywhere. How dare we think that talent only looks like comes with a certain thing?
I appreciate your response, because what it does absolutely force organizations, one, to have a response, right? If someone says, oh, that's just what is your response to that as a leader, as an executive? How will you respond? So I think that that's one kind of point that people can take away. The second point is, how does this align with your values? Because there's so many organizations that have it written on the cafeteria wall, but what people experience every single day is very opposite of that. And so it's like, how are we living our values? What does that look like in how we do all aspects of the employee life cycle, from recruiting to retention to promotion, et cetera?
Sure.
And so it's asking for very specific behaviors, and also what's the expectation at all of those levels as well, that executives need to be prepared for, because it's not just like, oh, this is what they told me to do. Why is this important to you? What makes this something that you are going to continue to push for? And so I think that that's an important piece of this as well. And then the third part that I heard was adapting to change, right? And making sure that you can understand what it looks like to operate outside of the box, what it looks like. Okay, we now have someone else that's a part of our community. Not only are we accepting, but do we have the right tools and resources and supports for this person to be successful, right? on the day-to-day, a swan and a duck pretty much swim, walk around, but but they might have different needs. They might have different, places where they whatever. So it's what are we being proactive and making sure that we have the tools, the resources, the support in place so that the swan is coming into a pond that is prepared for them versus one that, oh, well, I can't swim over there, so we'll get that fixed, but in another 6 months while the swan is doing what swans need to do. Right. So it's very, I think it's so important that as you pointed out, the intentionality, the ability to stand 10 toes down in what you say you're going to do. That is important for leaders, for executives to be able to hold firm to that, because that is what your employees see. That is what they experience every single day.
That's right. That's right. Just how you show up, right? It's how you show up. It's absolutely how you show up, and it's mirrors everywhere, right?
Everywhere.
Mirrors are everywhere, and you have to be able to recognize: am I putting the best foot forward in light of the values that I want to exude, the company I represent? I want to exude the team that we agree to, values that we want to exude. Am I being that role model for that? And that's anyone, that's personal leadership, but really it's particularly when you're leading an organization, leading some team and leading teams, and even when you show up with your customer, right? Same thing in the marketplace. It's like, yeah, he's got it. They have it together. They have a value set that we can lean on and lean to, and we know they're going to get us what we need.
And, fortunately and unfortunately for executives and leaders that are from marginalized communities, you're representing that community, right? If you want to or not, you are doing that. And there's this expectation. And so it's, okay, I'm wearing this, this facade of who I am, but and people are watching me. Those mirrors are there. People are watching me. And I, again, if I want to or not, am represented. And so to your point, how are you stepping out there and how are you showing up?
So I have a great story about that, if you don't mind me sharing. So one of most senior years ago, one of the most senior African American employees that I got to meet, a good brother, right? And at first he was very like introverted into himself, and he was just uncomfortable, around. It felt like he was uncomfortable around him, and I was, assisting him. We was at a conference doing some things, just getting to know each other. He asked me, what did you do for us? And I remember how he said that, like, what do you do for us, right? And so it means that he's embodied the values of the organization that we were a part of, right? And so that was something that's good. But he and I said, well, I did this, and it's my role, and I do this because of these folks, and I love being a part of this thing and whatever. And then we grew to be really good friends, and I'm always, back then it was like, I was joke with him and say, am I in your Fab Five, right? Back in the day, right? We used to have. And he was like, yeah. And I would tell him, I said, let me tell you something that probably you haven't heard it from, but I'm gonna give it to you where it goes, get it, like my grandfather used to say, right? You are the living embodiment, physical living embodiment of the ultimate success that some of us see, feel, touch, and hear every day, that I can absolutely reach that level, right? You are a living embodiment of my dream, someone else's dream, and a lot of people's dream that look like us and come from us, where we come from. And I'm not asking you to take on the moniker of, all on our shoulders. And because we know that's hard, right? We know and we're not doing, but you got to understand that you still are embodying someone's dream that looks like you. If a woman, if a Black woman, Asian, you are the living embodiment. And then when we talked about that years ago, and when he said that, he said I saw a sea change in him of being more taking on that champion role, Let me say that. And that champion role of making sure that, hey, this guy's that talented, and let's put him in this role. Let's go make him be that. And sometimes people need to hear that, right? You need to hear that and see that. And that's why I always give back to other things to make sure that, hey, I'm doing my part. That Ben Harrell did for me in '96, that he saw something in me, and I got to represent him well to go do that. And because I'm somebody's living embodiment of a dream. A kid from, Lemoyne projects in South Memphis, who, everybody else was doing this. He was really smart, and his parents worked really hard for him to go through Catholic school and was good in math and science, and became an engineer first and foremost. An engineer. You're already rare. You're a diamond in the rough. Somebody saw me to do this, and I saw somebody that looked like me who did it in the 80s, and then somebody in the 70s who did it. And I see more people. And so we need to still live in that embodiment of that dream and be and understand what that comes with that. Right. And I'm saying take on, be the mark. But what I'm saying is you got to understand that people see that. And that's how you show up. And that even exudes out for everyone, not just
absolutely.
And
I mean, it's such a powerful statement. You are the living embodiment of somebody's dream, right? Absolutely. I might put that on a T-shirt, or
I'm gonna copy that. I'm gonna go ahead. Let me go ahead and put that somewhere and put that on the shirt.
Okay, I'm gonna put your name on it. But that is, it's so powerful, because we often hear of like, I am my ancestors' wildest dreams, and there's a disconnect because that's ancestors, right? Like that's far. But to own that and to tell somebody that like you are the living embodiment of somebody's dream, that straightens your back up just a little bit.
Right.
And so I appreciate that. So DeWayne, I'm gonna do a little bit of a pivot because I know we are almost at time.
Yeah.
What are the things that you do to take care of you and to fill up your cup as you're doing all of this work?
That's a great question. So I nap.
I'm a fan. Yep.
I sit and I get up every morning very early. I'm an early riser. I go work out. Come back, I meditate, prepare for the day. I pray. Right. I know my family's praying for me and people around me. I'm connected with a gang of like-minded individuals that we hold each other accountable. We try to meet each other every quarter and ask that question, how you doing? Right. And I continue to pour and give, because that's a part of it. Because if I'm giving something to someone that needs something, that's fulfilling for me. That keeps the cup overflowing, if you will. I love it. And I like to vacation like everybody, and me and my wife, and we have a good time. And I got a young son who's going to be 21, and so we're trying to get the deck brush, get him ready to get out there into the world. But this world is different, so we're trying to embody everything we can with him. And but yeah, that's me. That's me in a nutshell. And I do a lot of these other things to make sure I'm sharing what I'm learning as I go.
Yeah, so appreciated. So if folks wanted to get in contact with you, what is the best way for them to do that?
Yeah, sure. So they can find me on LinkedIn. I'm there as well. I have a newsletter out that's also out. It's called The Storyteller. I gave you a story. That's again, speaking allegory. So that's it. And it's really sharing my thoughts on leadership and leadership journey. That's at thestory.beehive.com. And as well as I have a podcast out with another brother that's in the industry, aerospace and defense. It's called Brothers in Aerospace and Defense. And it's on YouTube. We're everywhere. Wherever your podcast you find, we got some vignettes there. We pick on this thing in the industry and we talk through it. We've talked about DARPA. We talked about supply chain. We've talked about the autonomous vehicles that's out there now that's happening in the industry. So a lot's there. We nerd out a little bit, but it's okay. Please come on and check us out. We love to hear. And if you want to get in touch with me, you can DM me on any one of those vehicles, and we definitely can get together.
I love it. Thank you, DeWayne, so much for joining me and having this conversation. Of course, I always tell folks, you're going to walk away with a couple of nuggets. And so I think there were quite a few nuggets in this one for them to at least think about, ponder, like, oh, let me go back to the office and realize, I am the living empower, embodiment. Like, oh, that's powerful. So, what does it mean to walk in that? So thank you so much for sharing that and just sharing your expertise and knowledge in this space. It's truly
Thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you all for tuning in to this week's episode. Like I said, I hope that you were able to walk away with a nugget or two that you can ponder or share with someone else. As always, we're here every Tuesday at 5:15 p.m. Eastern. Please be sure to like, share, and subscribe and tell all your friends. And until next time, have a good one.